Good evening, everybody, and welcome to I guess it's not the first podcast of the year because we did do one, or maybe two, back in January. Back as college season kind of wrapped up. But we haven't done one in a while, and it's getting that time of the year, Rick. I mean, there's 7-on-7s going on, and, there's kids that are getting ready. They're in the summer workout programs now and getting ready for fall football, and here it is just inside July, with this being Wednesday, July the 3rd. Hey, we're only about 4 weeks. We're about 7 weeks away from high school football season, so less than 2 months. And so it's going to be exciting, and we've got a lot of teams to talk about. We've got a lot of things happening around us, and just to get this thing started again and be able to talk high school football, it's going to be a lot of fun. And we'll carry this thing on, and hopefully, but before it's all said and done, we're going to end up with a lot of year-round content. But we are just coming back from a little hiatus. Of course, I've been since about the middle of February, since about February the 15th, 16th, somewhere in there. I've been getting yelled at from behind me as I've umpired a lot of games since February, doing high school softball and doing some private school baseball, and then of course I did some summer league stuff, some tournaments and some league play here locally, umpiring. And of course, the thing about umpiring is that's the job that you have, that a 50% approval rating is perfect. And so if you as long as you got half the people there mad at you, you're doing pretty good. Because if they all like you, or if they all don't like you, then you've got problems. You're not doing something correct. But anyway, and the way I look at it is you've got all these people behind you. They know the game better than you do anyway. So.
Yeah, they can see a lot better than you can.
No doubt. It's like I read a story not too long ago talking about umpiring, and so it was in Major League Ball, and this guy goes out to argue with the umpire about balls and strikes, and of course he gets thrown out of the ball game because you can't argue balls and strikes because it's a judgment call. So he goes out, he argues balls and strikes, he gets tossed, and he said, "You're tossing me out of the game." The umpire said, "Yeah, you got to go." He goes, "Well, where do you think I need to go?" And the umpire says, "Well, just go where I can't see you." And the guy walks over there and stands on the plate. He said, "You hadn't seen anything here all night long, so I'll just stand here." So anyway, yeah, that's the kind of stuff you get when you umpire quite a bit. But anyway, I've heard all kind of cool stuff. Matter of fact, I've got a bunch of years in and a lot of great material. Some of the good stuff that I've heard is you're not the worst I've ever seen, but you're the worst I've seen today. I've heard that, and I've heard, obviously they didn't make that rule book in Braille quite a bit. So anyway, there you go. But anyway, umpiring time is over for me for the summer, and now we're getting into high school football and everything, and I'm excited about that. So we've got a lot of stuff to talk about, and I'm glad, of course, to be joined by my partner, Rick Burkette. Rick helps me on as we do together. We do WS Neal high school football on the radio, and we also do a YouTube feed of the game on video, and so that's how Rick and I kind of associate around this whole realm of high school football and stuff. And so a lot of fun. We got a lot of stuff to look forward to. Neal's going to be a good football team again this year as Coach Hugh Fountain and that bunch over there gets ready for the summer. They've been participating in all kind of 7-on-7s and everything, so we're excited about that, and really just excited, period, about getting high school football started.
That's right, and I'm really looking forward to it. I was thinking, we were talking the other day, we're we're about to. I believe this is going to be our 5th season calling games together. So, and I appreciate it. I appreciate you asking me back in 2019, and just feel real blessed to be here and excited to get into it again this year. We love Love doing it. Love it up there at WS Neal. Great folks out there. I think they're going to have a really great football season coming up. Added a few players in the off season to go with what was already going to be a really good football team, and just looking forward to it. Like I said, just blessed to be here and blessed to be doing the podcast with you, my friend.
Well, I appreciate you. I certainly do. Well, let's get things underway as we start talking about high school football coming up this fall, and we're going to go from Alabama High School Athletic Association football, the HSAA. That's hard to say. HSAA. Anyway, it's the Alabama High School
I've always
Athletic.
thought that was a hard thing to say, that they should come up with a different acronym.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's a lot of letters thrown in there. There certainly is. But anyway, it's hard to spit out sometimes, especially when you mumble and stumble over words like I do. But anyway, so let's start talking about Class 7A Region 1. Now, these regions that we're covering, these are basically the Mobile, Alabama, Baldwin County, and into Escambia, Monroe, Clark, Washington, those areas. You're going to hear teams from Southwest Alabama, basically, is what we cover. And so that's what we're concentrating on, of course, Class 7A being the largest of the classifications in the state of Alabama. All these schools are located either in Mobile or Baldwin County, Alabama. So one of the fastest growing areas in the state of Alabama. These are your big schools, your biggest of the big. So 7A, Class 7A. Alma Bryant is one of the teams that's there. Last year, Alma Bryant had a 2023 record of 2-8. They were 0-6 in the region and did not make the playoffs. Baker was a playoff team last year. They were 8-3, 5-1 in the region. They got beat the first round of the playoffs. Daphne High School was 6-5, the Trojans. They were 4-2 in the region, 6-5 on the year. They got knocked out the first round of the playoffs, so they didn't win a playoff game. Then you had Davidson, the Warriors. They were 5-6, 3-3 in the region, and they also got beat the first round of the playoffs. Now, Fairhope, the Pirates, they were not a playoff team. They finished the year 3-7, 1-5 in the region. You had Foley was 5-5, so they were a 500 ball team, but only 2-4 in the region, so they did not make the playoffs either. Now, the winner of Class 7A Region 1 last year was Mary G. Montgomery. And Mary G. Montgomery was a good football team. They finished the year 12-1. The only game they lost all year long was their playoff game. So they were 10-0 regular season. They won 2 playoff games, and then in the third round they got beat. They were, like I say, they were 6-0 in the region. A very good football team. And now we've got a newcomer also, Rick, to 7A Region 1, and that's going to be the Robertsdale Golden Bears. As the Robertsdale Bears, they jumped from Class 6A Region 1 up to 7A Region 1. Now, in 6A Region 1 last year, they were 0-10 and 0-8 in the region, did not make the playoffs. So Robertsdale's going to have their work cut out for them, but Mary G. Montgomery is going to return a good bunch, and they should be picked to possibly win 7A Region 1 again.
Oh, I tell you, Mary Montgomery had it didn't end exactly like they wanted to, but you're talking about a storybook season last year. That's the best season that Mary G. Montgomery's ever had up here in Sims, Alabama, just, in 15 minutes up the road from where I live. And I know lots of the folks up there. My cousins all went to Mary G. Montgomery up there, the Lowe's. And it was just a story. They wind up going all the way to the quarterfinals and got beat by the eventual 7A state champion, Central Phoenix City, in the closest game anybody really gave Central Phoenix City until the championship game. So, they really had a good season last year, and they're expecting big things again this year. A lot of times when you lose a game like the one they lost to Central, it really makes you hungry, the ones that return for that next season. So I think they're the team to beat in that division, in that region.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. You know, one thing about Mary G. Montgomery is whenever you taste success and you come close, you taste that success. First time in the history of the school that they've been that successful on the football field, and you taste that success, and then you fall short. Boy, does that motivate you back, you know, to come back the next year and come back and fight a little bit harder, to do those extra reps in the weight room, to do those extra hard sprints at the end of practice, to try to get yourself ready to not have to experience that feeling of loss again like you experienced the year previous. So we're looking for big things from Mary Montgomery.
Yes, sir.
Let's go now to Class 6A as we look at 6A Region 1. Of course, first on the list, as these are listed alphabetical, Baldwin County High School. They were 2-8 last year, 2-6 in the region, and did not make the playoffs. So that's the Tigers of Baldwin County High School from Bay Minette. The Blunt Leopards were also 2-8. They were 2-6 in the region and failed to make the playoffs. Now, the team that everybody is looking, you know, 6A Region 1, they got to kind of be shaking their heads because they got a new school in 6A Region 1, and it's the Gulf Shores Dolphins. So Gulf Shores goes from 5A Region 1 into 6A Region 1. They were 15-0 last year, 8-0 in the region. They were 5-0 in the playoffs and won the Class 5A state championship in the state of Alabama, and they're now in 6A Region 1. So, I mean, you got to just, if you're already been a member of 6A Region 1, you got to be just shaking your head.
Yeah, that team they had last year, I mean, that's one for the ages. They didn't really even have the closest game they had was until the state championship game was against a very, very good UMS Wright team that they beat 17-0. And that was the closest game they had. They just blew through the rest of their season, blew through the playoffs all the way up till they played Ramsey in that classic state championship game that they had and beat them, of course. So they went 15-0. And I guess, you know, you and I were talking about that competitive clause.
Yeah.
They didn't get moved up because of student body. They got moved up because of the competitive clause and the way they ranked the teams and put them in different regions. But I mean, they had a team for the ages last year. I mean, they clobbered everybody. They had, I think 5 or 6 shutouts. I mean, they were that good, and they're going to be the team to beat in my opinion in that region.
If you look on down the list, McGill-Tulane is next alphabetically in the list. They were 5-5 and 4-4 and not a playoff team. You drop down to Murphy. Murphy was 2-8, 2-6 in the region. They were not a playoff team. Now Saraland, of course. Now here's going to be a game that is going to be worth the price of admission, because it's going to be now a region game, a Region 1 Class 6A ball game between the Gulf Shores Dolphins and Saraland. And so Saraland was 14-1. You know, Saraland was 14-1. They were 8-0 in region play, and they lost in the state championship game last year. You know, the thing, if you look at this region, by moving Gulf Shores up and putting them in Class 6A Region 1, you now, where most of the regions, if you look, they had 4 playoff teams in the region. There's now packed full. There's 5 playoff teams in Class 6A Region 1. Saraland being one. Spanish Fort's the next one.
Yeah, we know them all. I mean, these are all state championship teams in the past. St. Paul's, Theodore, Spanish Fort, Saraland, Gulf Shores, Murphy, McGill-Tulane. I mean, Blunt, I think.
You know, we talked about last year, we talked about 3A Region 1 and how tough it was. And now, you know, we're going to talk about it here in just a little bit about 4A Region 1. But in looking at the numbers, just purely the numbers, I would have to say of the classifications of the classifications that we're going to talk about tonight, 6A Region 1 has got to be hands down the toughest, because if you look, just like you said, we've got Saraland, Spanish Fort, St. Paul's, who was a playoff team, and Theodore. All of those were playoff teams. You got 5.
Right.
Gulf Shores, you got Saraland, Spanish Fort, St. Paul's, Theodore, all playoff teams. The overall record of this region last year, Class 6A, was, with the addition of Gulf Shores, was 63-41. So they were, they're just loaded with great football teams, winning football teams. I mean, they not only beat up on each other, they beat up on everybody.
That's right, yeah. And I mean, you look, like I said, think about the tradition of these schools. I mean, Bay Minette, Baldwin County, Blount, Gulf Shores, McGill-Tulane, Murphy, Saraland, Spanish Fort, St. Paul's, Theodore. They all have a lot of tradition and championship caliber high school teams. So, yeah, I agree with you, buddy. I think that's probably the toughest region in the state.
Moving now to Class 5A Region 1, BC Rain last year was a playoff team. They were 8-4 on the year, 5-3 in the region, and they won their first round playoff game. They were 1-1 in the playoffs and lost in the second round. Centronale 6-4. They were 4-4 in their region, but were not a playoff team. Now 6-4 is really a pretty good record. There were teams that were just above them. At a 7-3 mark, and another 7-3 team, which was UMS Wright. We'll get to them in just a minute, but right around that 6-4 mark, if you beat the right people, then you can certainly make the playoffs with a 6-4 record. You've got Alberta. Alberta's an up-and-comer, so Alberta hadn't been playing football that long. They were 2-8. They were 1-7 in the region, not a playoff team. You've got, well, of course, you're very familiar with Faith Academy. Faith Academy was 8-4, 6-2, and 1-1 in the playoffs. LaFleur, 1-9, 0-8 in the region. They did not make the playoffs. And UMS Wright, as I said, they ended up the year 7-5, 5-3 in the region, and 1-1 in the playoffs. Viger was not a playoff team at 7-3. Very well could have been. I mean, Viger was right on the cusp of getting in, and I think they lost a close game to Faith Academy that I actually listened to on the radio coming back from one of our games. I believe it was the one that we did at Cottage Hill Christian. That night, Viger and Faith Academy played, and I was listening to them on the radio. Faith Academy squeaked that game out, and that victory by Faith Academy knocked Viger out of the playoffs. And then you've got the Williamson Lions, who were 3-7 on the year. They were 2-8 in the region and did not make the playoffs. So the overall region record, 42-44. But you've got some good football teams right there, especially when you talk about BC Rain, Faith Academy, certainly UMS Wright. And you've even got to throw Viger in there because that's a possible playoff team. And since you lost a 5A Region 1 school in Gulf Shores, with them moving up, Viger's got to be feeling pretty good about that.
Yeah, and Viger had a great team last year. They lost a close game to Faith. They were ranked, I believe, up until that point. I think they may have lost. They did lose to UMS Wright. But they had, look at some of the scores. They had some great teams, and then they lost to Gulf Shores. But yeah, they just the loss to Faith Academy. I remember that is, I believe, the one that was like a tiebreaker head to head on the region games, and that's what got Faith in and Viger out. So, and that's a big rivalry anyhow. I mean, Faith and Viger. I mean. It is what it is. I mean, I even when all of my children were going to Faith Academy, one game that Kaylee was cheerleading in, had to call the police out there, had gunshots fired. So it's a big rivalry, and like I said, Faith knocked them off. So, but yeah, that's a tough region. It really is.
Yeah, that was a big game last year. I do remember that one. Tuning in and listening to that one on the way home. So now let's go down to Class 4A Region 1. And Class 4A Region 1 is going to be our region. This is going to be the region that we're working in this year, doing play-by-play football for WS Neal, for the Blue Eagles on the radio and on YouTube. First off, alphabetically, the Escambia County High School Blue Devils, our alma mater. I mean, both of us are old Blue Devils. Last year, the Blue Devils had a good team, but they just missed the playoffs. They were 6-4 on the year, 3-4 in the region, and just missed the playoffs. Now they've got some good football teams, and they've made two additions to Class 4A Region 1. The Jackson Aggies were the region champion last year. They were 11-1, 7-0 in the region. They went to the third round of the playoffs before they got beat, and that playoff loss was their only loss of the year. Then you've got the addition coming from 3A Region 1 up to 4A Region 1. You've got Mobile Christian, the last year's Class 3A state champion, at 15-0, 7-0 in the region last year, 5-0 in the playoffs. So you've got a very good team in Mobile Christian moving up. You've got Orange Beach. Orange Beach was 1-8. 1-6 in the region, not a playoff team. Satsuma was a 500 ball club. They were 5-5, 2-5 in the region, not a playoff team. You've got St. Michael. St. Michael, of course, good football team. They were 6-5 on the year. They finished the year 6-4, and they were 5-2 in the region, but they got knocked out the first round of the playoffs. And the Neal Blue Eagles, they make their way to Class 4A Region 1 from 3A Region 1. They were 6-5 last year, 5-2 in the region, and they got beat by Randolph County the first game of the year, one that you and I, went up there and did on the radio and on YouTube for WS Neal. So that region, that 4A Region 1 group, is going to be a very good group, and with the addition of Mobile Christian and also WS Neal in there to go along with the other teams that they've got in that region, that's going to be a strong region.
Well, you mentioned earlier the overall record of the teams in it from the 7A a while ago being very good. Of all of the Class 4A regions, this one had the best overall record last year, 50-28. And I mean, every team in there, with the exception of Orange Beach, they've been on some hard times last few years. But every other team in the region is a good football team. I mean, all of them last year had winning records. So it's going to be tough. And of course, that Mobile Christian team that won the state championship, you and I covered a couple of their games, and I'm telling you, nobody likes to hear that, and they got bumped up out of the competitive nature part of the clause in the way the teams are ranked, because they do not have the student body to be a 4A school. They're just located, again, 10 or 15 minutes down the road from me, and it's a small private school.
Right.
Of course, they are able to recruit out of the youth leagues and get the players they want, and they get up to 35 players. So, and that's but they're 35 good players that could play anywhere. And I think personally that team last year, and of course it's a different year, and they did lose some talent last year to go into play college football somewhere. But that Mobile Christian team's just ridiculous. I mean, I remember you and I talking to the people after the Thomasville game, and they just acted like they didn't want to believe you when you told them that they were fixing to run into a buzzsaw.
Oh yeah.
When they went down to Mobile, we were like, yeah. Well, we know our team's pretty good at WS Neal. I barely lost the playoff game that we were in, and that Mobile Christian team was just crazy good. And I think they're going to be the team to beat. Of course, Jackson was really good. They got beat in the quarterfinals of the playoffs. They're were undefeated up to that point. But anyhow, I think that Mobile Christian team, if it's anything like last year's team, Coach Ronnie Cockrell is a great coach, and so we'll see. It's going to be tough. Our team, WS Neal, is going to have another good team. So
yeah, they've been doing really well. Summer summer things. They had a good spring game over in Mississippi, and they did well over there against some Mississippi schools. And they've also, I've been seeing posts and stuff on Facebook where they've had some very good outings, doing some 7-on-7s and stuff like that. So it looks like, of course, we know the coaching staff there, very well and everything like that. Coach Hugh Fountain and Coach Sims, Coach Mike Sims, the offensive coordinator, especially offensively. I mean, they're going to open things up. Sims loves to open things up and throw the ball. Of course, they're going to be missing a very good quarterback that they lost to graduation last year, but everything that I've seen, just little pieces of video that has been posted to Facebook and stuff like that, they're going to be athletic as all get out. And they're still going to spread the field out, and they're going to try to throw it on you. And so their thing is they want to play good defense and everything, but they're going to be very offensive-minded, is W.S. Neal. So it'll just remain to be seen.
And they've got some very good players. They got several college prospects. You got the big lineman. You got Jabri Mackey. He's going to be back. We know that he's got speed to spare. So a lot of good returning players, and I think we're in for an even better year than we had last year.
Well, and I'll tell you something else, just kind of going back, one sport, especially these 3A schools and stuff like that, you've got specialty athletes and stuff that specialize in one sport, that, hey, this guy's a football player and he's just a football player. But one thing that you get in the class 3A and 4A, in kind of that middle range and stuff of schools, your athletes are multi-sport athletes. And one thing that I did notice that W.S. Neal did very well during the spring is, dude, you talk about a track team. These cats on the track and field events, the running events and stuff for track, I mean, they smoked some people. They had a very good track team at Neal, and they were proud of them, and you could just sense that the football coaches are sitting there going, yeah, that's great. They're doing great in track, but wait till you see us in the fall. And so that's what the expectation is there at Neal.
Yeah, and that's just one more year under Coach Fountain's belt to get his system in place and get them going,
Well, the thing we know about Hugh Fountain, and the numbers don't lie, and we love Coach Hugh absolutely to death, and he's won everywhere he's been. And so it's just a matter of time he's got a great coaching staff, and there's no doubt about that the kids that are there, they love to play for the man. And if I had a son right now playing high school football, I'd want him to be a Neal Blue Eagle. I would. I'd want him playing for Hugh Fountain.
I said Jabri Mackey earlier. Did he graduate? Did he graduate?
Don't ask me. I'm still trying to remember what I had for breakfast this morning. So don't even go there with me.
They've got plenty of speed. Got some good college prospects on the way. But Jabri, a great player regardless. But anyhow, yeah, we're looking forward to it. And you're right, Coach Hughes just a pleasure to be around. Good, fine Christian man, and like we've talked about before. Of course, our kids are all grown, but if we had to pick a coach we'd want them to play for, it'd be Coach Hugh Fountain.
So as we continue,
that's from a couple of Blue Devils too.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, that is true. And so as we continue to look at the Region 1s of all the classifications here in the state of Alabama, let's move to Class 3A Region 1. Of course, another region that we're very familiar with, because this is the region that Neal was in last year. There's an absence in Class 3A Region 1, and it's not anywhere on our list. And I'm sure that a lot of teams are really thankful for that. But Bayside Academy is the first team on the list. They dropped down from Class 4A Region 1 into 3A Region 1, but guess who's not on this list? Thomasville. Thomasville is no longer in Class 3A Region 1, so they've been moved out. Now, they haven't been moved to a Region 1 location, so they're not in 4A or anywhere, so nobody has to deal with Thomasville. More than likely, and I'm just thinking out loud, I would say Region 2 is a possibility. I'm not sure.
Thomasville they got moved to Region 3.
Okay, Region 3. I guess it depends on how they fall. I'm not sure who they're in there with, and you might can look that up if you've got your.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. Yeah, they're in thanks to the Alabama High School Football History Society. That's where we get that's where I get a lot of my information anyhow. And the gentleman that runs that website. But yeah, they got moved in with I think geographically it fits them better, especially with some of the movement we saw out of the region. They're in there with Dallas County, Selma, Greensboro, which is just up the road from them, Hale County, Wilcox Central. So they're in that central. And Thomasville is sort of in central Alabama,
right.
and so they just kind of got them out of that southern region and got them geographically more where they're actually at. I mean, shoot, it's a 2-hour drive from Bruton up
right.
Thomasville.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. I mean, if you're traveling on a Neal cheese wagon and you're going to play, or you're driving your family to go watch your son play football, going from East Bruton all the way to Thomasville, that's a haul. Yeah,
and now when you look at Region 1, Bayside, Cottage Hill, Christian, both, Baldwin, Mobile County, Excel, Flemington, Evergreen, Monroe, and Miller, they're all geographically makes more sense now than it did last year with Thomasville in there.
Right. Bayside Academy, they were a playoff team last year. Only 3 playoff teams remain. Bayside Academy was a playoff team in Class 4A Region 1. So they dropped down to 3A Region 1. They were 8-3 last year, 5-2 in the region. They lost the first round of the playoffs. Cottage Hill Christian was not a play. Now, all right, so, and I want to pause right here with Cottage Hill Christian, because we saw Cottage Hill Christian last year. We saw Cottage Hill Christian against Neal. I've been watching some kids that we had the privilege of watching play last year for Cottage Hill Christian. Dude, Cottage Hill's going to be a good football. They're going to surprise some folks this year. I just got a sneaky feeling that Cottage Hill Christian is going to be one of the teams to beat. Yeah, they were 2-8 last year. They were 1-6 in the region, but they are going to be sneaky good this year because they were loaded with some very talented wide receivers. As a matter of fact, they've got some kids there at Cottage Hill that are actually, they're SEC level talent, but they were young.
Receiver, remember? Yeah, they were young, and they've got that really tall receiver that's got speed to spare too. And I agree with you. I think they're going to be a really good football team.
So Cottage Hill's going to be a good one. We know Bayside's going to be good. Now the XL Panthers, they kind of fell off last year after the year they had the year before, back in 2022. XL was just loaded in 22. Now, I'm not sure what they're going to have this year, but I do know that the coaching staff there is no, that XL Panther bunch, they're a proud bunch. And so they're in the process of building. I know they had a very good baseball team in the spring, so that tells me that they've got a good group of kids and a good group of they've got a good athletic group there and a good program. So watch out for XL as they will be looking to hopefully get back in the playoff scheme of things. Flemington, of course, what can we say about Doug Vickery Jr.? Doug Vickery's, he's built great teams for many, many years at Flemington High School. The Hurricanes, they were a playoff team last year, actually won a first-round game. They were 7-5 at the end of the year, 4-3 in the region. They ended up 1-1 in the playoffs, so that's a playoff team for you. Hillcrest Evergreen was right there, dude. They played... Matter of fact, wasn't that the first game of the year last year when they played T.R. Miller and almost beat Miller?
They just played one of the most brutal schedules. I don't think they won a game until right toward the end of the season. Then they reeled off about
3 in a row, yeah, because they ended up 3-7, yeah.
Yeah, But all of their games, you go back and look at their record, were very close games, and including the one that they played against our very good WS Neal team. So they were a good team.
Yeah, Monroe County, they were 1-9 last year, 0-7 in the region, so nowhere to go but up from Monroe County. Now, here's kind of a shocker, and this is kind of one of those that got you shaking your head, but they say it's because of numbers, enrollment figures and stuff like that. T.R. Miller, the Tigers dropped from Class 4A Region 1 down to 3A Region 1, so even though you subtract Thomasville from the mix and you get them moved over to Region 3, you've got T.R. Miller, a 4A playoff team last year at 8-4, 5-2 in the region, and 1-1 in the playoffs. Then you've got T.R. Miller dropping down to Class 3A, and they'll be a 3A Region 1 team this fall.
Yeah, and of course they're tied for the winningest program of all time in the Alabama High School Athletic Association. So they just tradition galore there, and we know that you can just expect. They're like the Alabama of their high schools. They just reload every year, and we know they're going to be good.
Well coached, here's the thing is because I see a lot of things around T.R. Miller High School, know a lot of people that graduated from there. Of course, we both do, being right there from Atmore, and just 30 miles away from T.R. Miller. T.R. Miller has such a winning tradition, and one thing about it is they have town pride, and boy, they followed their Tigers on Friday night. They fill up the stadium, Bruton Municipal Stadium right there at T.R. Miller High School, and when they're on the road, the people are on the road with them. I mean, the town of Bruton just about empties out whenever the Tigers are on the road. They support those T.R. Miller Tigers.
Yeah, they do, and that's why they're the winningest high school team. I'd have to say, just I'm not sure where they rank. I know T.R. Miller's got like 729 wins, making them at least number one. But I know Fikes is right there in one of the Red Devils from up there in Northeast Alabama, right there with them. But those two teams in the state of Alabama, we're not just talking about the last 15 years. You got to go back to the 50s and 60s, and they had good football teams. And so there's just, and that's because of the support they get from from the city of Bruton. No doubt about it. And they're former players and former coaches and former students. And hats off to them. It's impressive.
It is. Now we move down to Class 2A Region 1. Class 2A Region 1 has a brand new addition. Class 2A Region 1, Bayshore Christian. This is their first year to field a football team. Their record in 2023 was 0-0. They were 0-0 in the region, and of course they were not a playoff team. But they're brand new to football as Bayshore Christian. Now I will say this: I saw Bayshore Christian had a baseball team because I did some baseball on the radio back when Flomaton was in the playoffs. Flomaton got knocked out of the playoffs in Class 3A by Bayshore Christian in Class 3A Region 1 baseball. So, I mean, Bayshore Christian was a good baseball team. They're adding football to their sports for guys, for boys sports for the fall. So Bayshore Christian will end up being in 2A Region 1. Moving from Class 1A Region 4 up to Class 2A Region 1 is going to be Central of Haneyville. And last year they were 2-7. They were 2-5 on the year. Did not make the playoffs. Now you've got a playoff team in Chickasaw. So you've got the Chieftains of Chickasaw. They were 5-6 last year, 3-2 in the region, 0-1. They got knocked out the first round of the playoffs. Remember Clark County? Remember how we talked about how Clark County was so sneaky because they had about a 500 record? They were 7-6 on the year, but they were 5-0 in Class 2A Region 1. Won the region and ended up 2-1 in the playoffs and got beat out in the third round. J.U. Blackshear, the Bulldogs, right down the road from me here in Uri, Alabama. J.U. Blackshear 3-7 last year, and they were 1-4 in the region. But J.U. Blackshear is going to be another one of those schools that's up and coming. As I know Coach Sims over there, he's got a good bunch. He's got a good bunch coming back, and I hear a lot of good things coming from the J.U. Blackshear High School Bulldogs as they get set for football season this fall. St. Luke's was 6-5 last year. They were 4-1 in the region, 0-1 in the playoffs. They got beat in the first round. And then you've got Washington County. They were 4-7, but also a playoff team. They made the playoffs with a region record of 2-3. They ended up getting beat the first round of the playoffs, but Washington County also a good team in that Class 2A Region 1 group.
Yeah, there's a lot of pride and tradition in that region also. That's one of those regions in that 2A that they wind up playing, like you were talking about with Grove Hill, Clark County, playing a lot of larger schools, and only larger schools beat Grove Hill last year. We knew they had a good team, and then they showed it in the playoffs.
Well, yeah, I mean, we talked about them playing the larger schools, and their record didn't look like they were that good of a football team. But the thing is when it came down to it, of course, and you're playing like competition in your own region, you're 5-0, you're knocking everybody off, and they ended up a playoff team because of it. Even though, sometimes you have to sacrifice wins for experience. And so I think that's what the coaching staff, that was their mindset. Is hey, we're going to sacrifice some wins during the season, but we're going to get that experience of playing good, tough football, and they were certainly right there on the cusp of doing big things at Clark County, were the Bulldogs.
Yeah.
So now let's finalize everything up and look at Class 1A Region 1. And of course, I mean, this is a group that's absolutely loaded. You've got some playoff teams, and when you talk about small schools in the state of Alabama, I mean, these schools are some of the most highly decorated Class 1A schools in the state of Alabama. When we go down the list, you'll see what I'm talking about. Of course, Fruitdale, you've got Fruitdale. Their 2023 record was 1-9. They were 1-5 in the region and not a playoff team. J.F. Shields, they struggled. Of course, the problem with J.F. Shields loaded with athletes. Now, you wouldn't want to play J.F. Shields on the basketball floor because they'll shoot your eyes out. But the problem is they just don't quite have the numbers football-wise, and every now and then they'll pick up some wins. They'll have a good group of kids come through there, and they have good groups of kids every year. But it's hard to play football when you don't have. I mean, I remember some years back going to some J.F. Shields games when my son would play at J.U. Blackshear, and J.F. Shields would have 15 kids dressed out on a Friday night for a football game, and if anybody got hurt, or something like that. I mean, it's just hard to participate in high school football at any level with that kind of numbers. And so it's not J.F. Shields' fault. They're a great school, a great tradition. They just don't have the numbers to participate even at Class 1A Region 1. Now, here's one of the big boys, of course, ended up being the Class 1A state champion last year, the Leroy Bears. 14-0 regular season record, or season record, 14-0. They were 6-0 in the playoffs, or actually in the region. They were 6-0 in the region, 5-0 in the playoffs, and they were your Class 1A state champion last year. Got to watch that game on TV as part of that Super 7 broadcast, and boy, Leroy they were a good team. They were really good. Marengo was 3-7, and they were 1-4 in the region. McIntosh 2-7. They were 2-4 in the region. Here's another very good team. This was a war when these two teams ended up playing each other, and I believe they met in the playoffs, if I'm not mistaken. 9-3, the Milry Wildcats, 9-3, 5-1 in the region, and they ended up being 1-1 in the playoffs. Now, they may not have played. I don't think they played Leroy in the playoffs. I remember that the Milry-Leroy game decided the region championship, and it was like the last game of the season.
Yeah, and Leroy, and of course, that's just a huge rivalry game. It doesn't need any extra fuel to start with, but yeah, that was a big game, and of course Leroy had a season also for the ages last year, going undefeated. I think they've got the longest winning streak in the state currently. So I have that pressure on them this year, but it had a great season. So did Milry.
Oh yeah, I mean they were both very good football teams, and the funny thing is I get to looking at these schools in Class 3A, 2A, in here in 1A. It's funny looking back. I mean, how many of these schools that I've either witnessed games in when my son was playing, I've either refereed games at when I was doing football or umpired baseball or whatever. But all these schools very familiar. And the thing about these really small schools in Southwest Alabama, when you talk about Fruitdale, Shields, Leroy, Marengo, McIntosh, Milry, Southern Choctaw, Sweetwater, all these schools, you're just talking about tradition. They just drip with tradition and the pride that these small communities have in these high schools, because on a Friday night when the lights come on, everybody in town's at these ball games.
Yeah, I mean, everything revolves. I mean, they're just, Leroy and Milry, I mean, it's hard to even call them towns. I mean, there isn't a downtown Leroy. You
right.
know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's right there. I mean, Leroy High School is right slap on Highway 43. Right,
and it's just a community. It's similar to Northview down in Florida, our neighbors down there. So it's there's a lot of pride in that community. Same up at Sweetwater. And all the social things that are involved in those communities revolve around the football team. So it's a big deal for them.
Southern Choctaw is another team that is in Class 1A Region 1. Of course, they were 4-7 last year, 3-3 in the region. We're actually a playoff team, even with a 4-7 record, and they ended up getting beat the first round of the playoffs. And then, of course, Sweetwater had a very good year on the football field last year, 9-2 on the season, 5-0 in the region with Sweetwater, 5-0, and ended up being 1-1 in the playoffs, and they got beat out in the second round. So just looking as we kind of remember and look at all these teams and what they've got upcoming, I mean, I'm excited because we're getting set to kick this thing off in about 7 weeks or so. I believe the 23rd of August. That week, 22nd, 23rd, Thursday night, Friday night of that week, that is going to be week 0, and then week 1 will be, I believe, September 30th. That's when we actually start our season with W.S. Neal, and a majority of the schools will have games that week 1. A few will have on that week 0, and a lot of them do schedule that extra game, whether it be a jamboree or even a regular season game. They use that to kick the year off. But boy, we're close. And
WSL could, am I right, wrong? I mean, they could still schedule somebody for the 23rd of August if.
They could, they could add somebody late, somebody that's available. They could add somebody that may be out of state. They've not been scared to venture down into Florida and play. They've not been scared to go over into Mississippi and play. So I'm sure with Coach Hugh Fountain's contacts, they very well may be looking for another game. Or, as we've talked about before, they've only got 8 games scheduled. So they've got 8 games.
No, they got 9.
Oh, yeah, okay. 9. I'm sorry, 9. So they've got 9 games scheduled. The thing is it may be good having that extra week off to get started in the beginning, and certainly you want to have a break about midway through. So whether they feel another game will be left to be seen. I would expect at this point, with it being so late, probably not.
Yeah, probably not. Probably not. Well, we could pick up another game. You never can tell with us.
Well, that's true. I mean, we're always game to go pick up another one. I mean, we'll follow. of course, we work for the man, or the men actually. We work for WBZR Radio. So whatever we choose to do there will be totally left up to them. But we're not scared. We're certainly not scared to pack up and go travel and go see a good football game. Hey, this is an opportunity right here. I wish we could sell it and figure out a way to do it, because I know. In last year, we got a chance to talk to some people, because after our season was over with, after the first round of the playoffs, we ended up going over to Saraland, and just watching games from the stands. But when those people from Saraland found out that, hey, we did football on the radio, all of those people expressed to us that we talked to there said, boy, I wish we could get Saraland football on the radio. Well, guess what? Yeah. We do too. because those would be some very great games to go do and get them aired on the radio. That would be awesome to be able to do. And of course, Saraland's going to be loaded again this year as they've got 5-star football players and football players that you're going to watch on the field on Friday night and then watch on TV the next year on Saturday, probably playing in the SEC somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, just like they did last year. You got several other players that'll be playing the SEC this year. So,
well, last year, the big defensive lineman Antonio Coleman, who had initially verbally committed to Auburn, and then he withdrew his commitment and has now verbally committed to Alabama. He's going to be on that team. He'll be a senior this year, and so he'll finish his year out, at Saraland, and then next year. He'll be on the sideline. If he doesn't change his mind again, he'll be on the sideline for Coach Kalen DeBoer and the Alabama Crimson Tide.
And of course, Alabama picked up 5-star receiver Ryan Williams, who will be in uniform, even though he technically moved his recruiting up a year and decided to leave school early. And he'll be playing for Alabama this year as a freshman. And a lot of people are saying he's like the next Devontae Smith or Leo Jones, and we watched him last year for Saraland. So, Saraland will be another good football team, and I'm with you. I'd be up for doing them anytime on the radio.
Yeah, that was cool when we went up there. We jokingly, not even knowing, but every time we would talk about Saraland football, we jokingly referred to them as the University of Saraland. And then lo and behold, we go and start watching games there on Friday night after we're available to go. And we went up there on Friday night, and there are school teachers that are walking around that are supporting Spartan football, and they've got the University of Saraland on their T-shirts. So I just thought that was cool. That that the way that, because it's like going and watching a small college football game in a small college football venue, no doubt.
Yeah.
Well, man, it's been awesome kind of kicking this thing off and getting football started. Of course, I know you've probably drowned quite a few crickets so far this year and caught quite a few crappie on the jigs that you use out. I know you said that you and Janet just went over into Mississippi and fished a couple of days ago. Did y'all have a good day over there?
Oh, we did. It was brutally hot. There were some thunderstorms around, but particular lake we were fishing in, there was no wind. The air temperature was 94, 95 degrees, but of course the big crappie boat I got, the G3, is all aluminum, and it just was reflecting that heat back up. But no, we did. We had a really good day. The of course, fish being cold-blooded animals, when the water temperature was 90 degrees,
Ooh.
And they're biting because it speeds their metabolisms up. And of course, I didn't realize she had caught as many as she had. She was sitting in the back of the boat. I was crappie fishing. She was catching those big bow hunker bull brim. Which I had to clean today. And of course, I was crappie fishing. And this time of year, the crappie are going to be in deeper water, seeking out that thermocline, that they may not be real deep. For instance, the crappie that I caught were in about 12 feet of water, but in other words, the bottom depth was 12 feet, but they were down around 6 or 7 feet. So I had to get my jig down to around 6 or 7 feet in order to get them to bite. But yeah, we caught them until we we both almost stroked out from the heat.
Yeah, well, I get it, because you know how I am when I go with you. Of course, you're tougher than I am. I mean, I'll give you that, dude, because every time you get me out in the boat, the first thing I get, you know, whenever we get close to somewhere where I'm better in the shade. Get me in the shade. I don't want to be in the sun. I don't want to be out in the heat. You know, fishing to me, if it's done out in the sun, and I should not break a sweat when I'm fishing. I just shouldn't. I mean, yeah, it's supposed to be relaxing and non-work. And
you remember that day last year in June, you and I went over to Mifflin, and there was no wind that day, and there wasn't any shade either. We were out there fishing those lily pads, and I think once we realized we had around 30, 35, I think you wound up cleaning all of those.
I did. And I didn't like you very much. I didn't like you very much for that either, because it was hot. It was hot on the river, and it was hot when I got home. And so I was out there under the shade tree, and it was still hot under the shade. And I was out there with a spoon, you know, cleaning those brim. And I'm gonna tell you now, you know, something that I found out is those shell crackers, they will clean pretty easily. But them big old bull bluegill, them big old, you know, black ones, them big old red bellies, dude.
I hear you.
I mean, and of course they got scales on them the size of quarters, because they bigger than your hand, you know, and so you're out there trying to clean them, and they're aggravating, and of course I'm getting finned all up and everything else, because I'm you know, and so I'm just going all sissy on them fish. You know, I started.
I'm much more sympathetic to you after today. Like I wound up cleaning over 30 today, and I'm with you. The one thing I'll say about the bull brim, you need one of those little hand scalers that you can. I don't even know if you. Kaylee bought me one from an antique shop. It's one of those old timers used to use. Of course, I'm an old timer now, but. And it rakes the scales off of it, but those bull brim, you're right. It's like scaling a redfish. Those scales do not want to come loose. The crappie and the shell cracker, you're right. They scale a little easier, but those big bull brims, you're going to stick your fingers 4 or 5 times with those fins.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Well, and we'll have to go. You know, hopefully we'll get a chance to go and we can do a podcast episode between now and the time football season starts, and we'll talk a lot about fishing and everything, because we both love it. You know, I mean, it's just, you know, something else we hadn't done. Of course, it's gotten so hot now, and the pompano aren't running anymore, really, because it's so hot, and you know, we haven't surf fished all year long. That would be a lot of fun, but we need to wait till the fall, because I'm gonna tell you, my body does not do very well with the sun baking down on it. It just no longer does. You know, I don't even want to. I get aggravated, and I don't want to do nothing. And of course now, with all the shark attack stuff and everything that's been happening along the Gulf, I'm not even getting in the water to cool off either, because it's like I've told you before. You know, the thing that I've realized, if you go to the Gulf of Mexico and you get into the water, you are no longer the home team. You are now the visitor, and there are things there that will come along and bite you, and I'm too old to be bit. And I'm too old to be hit, and so, you know, I mean, I'm just getting old's not for sissies. It's not.
I hear you, man. I'm telling you, we like I said, with Janet and I were fishing in that lake over there in Mississippi. It's just a little oxbow lake off the Pasco River. It was so hot, and after I started realizing we had more fish than I probably wanted to clean, we were like, you know what? It's too hot, and so we left early. Right. I mean, we left them biting, and that's unusual for me, you know. And but she had my boat too, so
well, you know, there's an old country song in there somewhere that talks about it being, you know, you're sorry if it ever gets too hot to fish. I mean, you're just, you know, you have just hit rock bottom if it's too hot to fish. But I get it. Matter of fact, I told a guy, went to prayer meeting tonight at church. I told a guy at church tonight, of course, I was funning and pulling his leg, and I said, this is a little crude. I said, but I tell you, when I was riding through Atmore today on the way to church, I saw something strange on the side of the road. He said, what do you see? I said, I saw two, what are they called? Fire hydrants. Yeah, I saw 2 fire hydrants fighting over a dog. Because that's how hot it was.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, 2 fire hydrants out. It was so hot that the fire hydrants were fighting over a dog. So anyway, that's how hot it's been here in South Alabama. Well, Rick, that's going to about wrap things up, man. We've been talking about things for almost an hour, and we got to get it put out there for folks to listen to. But join us again and again. And wherever you happen to get us, hit the like button. Make sure that you subscribe to, whether it be on Spotify or wherever you want to find it, Amazon Music. I mean, our podcast is anywhere you can find a podcast, you can find us, and we would be glad to have you to listen each and every week. We're going to try to start these things. We've kicked it off now, and we're going to try to keep it going and do a weekly podcast so just remember, SportzMoose Media Podcast. Rick and I will have it throughout the football season and beyond, so just tune in, hit the like, subscribe. We want you to be a part of it, and certainly if you want to listen to it in your car or whatever, then by all means just download it and listen, and we'll be glad for you to do that. Rick, my friend, have a good evening, you and Miss Janet.
All right, buddy, appreciate it.
Yes, sir. We're gone. We're out of here, so y'all have a good night, everybody.